Matt SHEPARD is a great Canadian runner who recently won the men's 48-hour foot race at the Across the Years event down in Arizona. And in honor of his performance, I'm re-releasing a podcast that he and I recorded earlier this year. Matt and I talked about training and nutrition and coming back from an incredibly brutal injury. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this, even if you're re-listening to it, but especially if it's your first time coming across it. So congrats, Matt, on your win a couple weeks ago. And I hope anybody listening to this enjoys it. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, share, whatever you can do to get this out to more people. I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's get to the interview with Matt. Welcome to the Eat Well, Sleep Great, Run Far podcast. My name is Will Frantz, and I'm here to help you go farther, faster, and longer without injuries, gut problems, or giving up your favorite foods. Right, welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today we have Matt SHEPARD on, a Canadian ultra runner who a lot of you probably know more than you know me, very honestly. And Matt and I are just going to chat about what he's doing, how we got into running, fueling, training, all that stuff. So, Matt, where are you right now? Since I know you're kind of in the middle of nowhere doing weird stuff. Where are you right now?
I'm in Kimberley, BC, British Columbia, here in Canada. We're getting ready for a race called Black Spur, an ultra, and so I'll come out here in advance and clean up all the trails and make sure they're all runnable. I know that there's a few sections here that have been hit pretty hard by the blowdown, so
Sure.
A couple of days out, and we'll get them all cleaned up and marked.
Are you getting a bunch of weather up there right now?
A bunch of hot weather. Holy smokes! It's been like plus 30 or more every day, which for you
That's
Americans,
warm, yeah, it's like
warm.
85. Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, man, I feel that. What are you doing that's taking you out there? Like, what's your job these days?
Yeah, so this year I teamed up with a company called Sinister Sports, and they put on a few big races here in Canada. The Sinister 700-mile trail race. Let's see, they have the Canadian Death Race up in Grand Cache, which is 125 kilometers, lots of elevation in that one, rugged trails.
Sure.
And then this is their other big one, the Black Spur Ultra, which is a 54 and 108 kilometer here at it's like on an alpine ski resort on the trails there, up and around that. So it's going to be a lot of vert in this one.
That sounds hectic. When is that race? It's like the 13th of August right now. How soon are you having to run that?
The 20th is this coming weekend. Okay. So it's like a week out from right now.
Okay, soon. So what do you have to do to get stuff ready for that? I think, like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's entailed. I've seen a bunch of trail work, but like, what goes into making these races possible?
Wow, man, we have a whole team, but my job, I work operations, so I will get all of the equipment ready, make sure all the things. I'm a kind of a mechanic, a little handyman, so I take care of all the equipment, and then I drive out to the race course in advance of the race and do the trail clearing and the marking. So I will hike all the trails, and carry a chainsaw or a pair of generally a chainsaw and a pair of those like manual loppers.
Sure.
I can get most things with that. Sometimes I'll also carry a brush saw, basically like a weed eater, but like with a big saw blade on the end of it.
Yeah.
If it's like a lot of little fingers that are growing up. So I'll do that, and then I'll go and mark the course like ribbon by ribbon all the way across. And then once the race happens, I'll do the logistics side of things, making sure all the aid stations stay fully stocked. And if, something happens on course, we'll, get the resources to make sure everybody can get out safe. And then afterwards I'll do all the cleanup, pull down all the ribbons, pick up any gels or whatever that people drop on the trail, and
Sure.
then off to the next one.
That's nuts, dude. So you're there a week in advance. Like you're taking a second just after driving for a large chunk. Like, are you going to spend the entirety of this coming week getting that ready?
Yeah, it'll be, I know I have at least 2 full days of trail work. Like that one section, I'll be there all day long just doing that leg. And then, so I'll be the next couple of days for sure, just doing trail maintenance. And then I'll follow through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with the flagging. We don't like to flag too far in advance because sometimes people can yank the ribbons down, and that can really
Fact.
be, yeah, it can cause a lot of chaos on the course. So do try to do it as close to the race as possible, especially in areas and trails that are like heavily trafficked. We'll wait until like the day prior. That way, just because you never want to risk
Of
having
course.
missing ribbons and then somebody gets lost. That's terrible.
Yeah, we had that happen like 2 years in a row, and the race that kind of got me into knowing the sport existed. Somebody who's not great took down a couple ribbons, and it was not
Oh,
stellar. Yeah, it's awful, man. People ended up like going the wrong way for ages, and it's not great.
I I had the opposite happen where I was leading a race and I'm colorblind, so I have a hard time like
I didn't know
distinguishing
that.
colors on the ribbons. And as I'm running, I have nobody to follow, so I'm going and I'm following ribbons. Unfortunately, I think they were like orange ribbons, and I started following green ribbons, not knowing the difference. And
Shit,
so
dude.
it took me, somebody had forgotten to take down the ribbons from their race, and this
Oh,
race crossed over, and so I saw those ribbons, took a turn, and I was like, yeah, 2 miles off course, and was like, I don't think I'm supposed to cross this river right now. And so I had to navigate my way back. But it was, yeah, take down your ribbons when you're done.
yeah, man. I didn't actually know you were colorblind. I feel like that's a thing we might. That feels like an easy fix. I feel like we should just use colors that more like pretty much everybody can see. Right? Like that's kind of makes a bunch of sense. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because like color blindness is so fickle. Some people can
Sure,
see, like for me, pink, pink and white are really great colors, but that's difficult for other people with color blindness. So
sure.
I don't know, but definitely not orange. Orange is the worst. It's my least favorite. It's so hard to see. It's green. I mean, it blends in perfectly with grass.
Fascinating. All right, it's good to know.
Camouflage.
Um, so how did you get into? I think this, and everybody knows I think this. Ultra running's a crazy sport. How'd you get into it?
Oh man, like, well, okay, so originally I was overweight as a kid. I didn't do much as far as sports. I did play football in high school. Um
Is that like
and
Canadian football or or
no,
American? Yeah.
I was living in the States back
Okay.
then.
Cool.
Um and so yeah, I was overweight. I joined the forces and fell in love with running in basic training, kind of just like really enjoyed it. Not competitive running, just more so for myself.
Sure.
And then after I got out of the forces, I was living in Alaska and I was doing just these big mountain adventures. Again, just like not as part of a team or anything, just out having fun in the mountains. And I was going quite a long ways, a marathon a day or more. And
Really?
I
So
remember reading about Scott Jurek's 24-hour American record in 2010, and
sure.
I that was my introduction where my mind just went, what? Like people can run for 24 hours? I started to think like, if I didn't sleep, like how far could I go if I tried? And so like 3 months after hearing about it, I was living on an island in Alaska, and so I organized my own 24-hour race on a 1.75 mile course around town. And I started that. So I had the fire department was my aid station, and I just went and I did 12 hours and like 53 or so miles. And I couldn't keep my body temperature up. I probably hadn't eaten more than 1,000 calories. I was struggling hard, so I pulled the pin. But that was my like welcome to ultra running effort. So yeah, it's just been from there. I didn't do many for like the next 7 years. I don't think I ran another ultra. I just
Okay.
continued to run for myself. And yeah, and then I turned 30 in 2017, and I was like, I want to try this death race, 125 kilometers. It wasn't too far from where I was living at the time. So yeah, I went out and tried that, and it's just kind of been a passion from then on.
That's awesome, man. So like how many of you do you know how many you've done since then?
As far as organized events, geez, I don't know, maybe like a couple dozen.
Sweet.
And like it's an unorganized, just like going 50 miles or more on my own, like I would wager probably 100. I don't know, quite a few. I love I like just getting out on my own feet and going out and exploring, and putting on a big day is just like so much fun. Like that's what I live for.
That's awesome, man. I mean, how so it's 2017. So how has it been going lately? Like what have been the past? It seems like you enjoy, I don't know, a wide variety. I don't know if many people who like run 100 or run their like own self-supported stuff and then also like do the backyard format. Like what have you been digging a lot lately?
Yeah, I've really been enjoying a lot of trails. Like generally, I'm kind of like I perform really well in like long flat stuff. That's kind of like my jam.
Sure.
But as far as like enjoyment, I mean I do enjoy those. I enjoy being able to like test those limits to see how far you can go in the easiest possible circumstance.
Mhm.
You know, flat, you get an aid station every like mile or two. It's, you know, when you're on a loop course and a timed event, it's so like all the logistics are taken away. It's just all
Yep.
straightforward. Just run and see how far you can go, which is fun. It's,
Sure.
you know, it's a really interesting challenge. But you know, my ultimate dream is the Barkley marathons. Like I want to complete. I don't even just want to try it once. I just want to do it all the way, one shot. So I mean, I'm definitely not ready for that. I'm still
Love that.
working towards it, but I want to go into it knowing I'm gonna crush. So I've really been enjoying spending more time out on the trails and getting in some elevation. You know, it's where I fell in love with running, was the trails.
Sure.
And it was only until like I think in 2019 I found out, you know, kind of like, oh, I have a knack for this really, really long, flat, easy stuff. Um, so I do a lot of that just because, you know, like it feels good to be successful. So you want to do the things that you're
Yeah,
successful at.
of course.
But as well, I'm expanding into these new areas where I maybe am not quite as efficient or not quite as strong, and just really work on those areas so that I can be just super well rounded, you know, all across that. Like I just like all the different things that my body can do, and just trying to test all those limits.
Love that. I mean, when you mentioned loop course, I have to think about across the years, right? Because that's how you and I met. You were coming back from an injury that you should expound upon, and we got talking about basically recovery food to get you ready for this big race. So like what was the injury? How did it happen? And then like what led into that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's rewind. That was 2021. Yeah, it was just this
About a
last
year
year. It
ago.
feels like,
Yeah.
man, that feels like it was so long ago.
Right though.
I was at Biggs World Championships in Tennessee, and that's a backyard format, like the penultimate one for the year.
Yeah, it's like
And
4.1 loop, right? Like that's what we're
4.1 mile loop, and then it says like a trail loop, and then also like a road loop for the night course.
right.
Really, really great event. So I was out there, and I had just gotten onto the trail maybe a couple hours prior, and I was really just struggling with reading the ground. I don't know if it was like vision fatigue, or, you know, I was definitely feeling tired. It was kicking my bum. And
Sure.
yeah, so I tripped, I caught a root or something, and I fell, and I cracked my pelvis.
Yep.
So I was like, coming back, that was like mid-October, and I was Sorry, I
Yeah.
just got blasted with dust.
You're right, man. Everybody got to listen to me grimacing while you're doing that. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, so I had across the years was my goal race. I really wanted to I've had this dream of chasing the Canadian 6-day record, which is 144 hours timed event on a loop course.
Yep.
And Arizona, really great course. I like to go there each year. It's just, they call it across the years because it starts in December and it ends in January. Just kind of just a fun thing to say, like I finished the year and I started the year running.
Yeah.
So I've been going out there trying to chase this 6-day record. And after this injury, I thought, oh my gosh, I've only got 10 weeks to get ready for this effort. You know, let's see, I think it's 540 miles is
Something
in
like
6 days.
That sounds right. That's what's in my brain. Yep.
So I was like, okay, how am I gonna okay, what do I need to do to get ready for this next one? And so that's when I reached out to you, just kind of looking for some advice on like what foods can I give my body to help me accelerate the recovery process, and how can I do this in the most minimal time. And I think I saw all your stuff you were posting on Facebook, and that's what I was like, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. I just really like, the way you brought the information. So
thanks.
I did like maybe 5 weeks of recovery following bigs. And then once I was cleared, I was out there in the pool and just trying to do as many walks as I could to get back into it. And by like December 20th or so, I 8 days out from my race, I went out for a run and set a 10K PR.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which I don't ever run 10K, so it's not super impressive, but it's just like I was out there just having a good time, felt good. And I was just dropping some fast ones. So I was like, this is really positive.
Yeah. Going
into the 6-day race. But unfortunately it didn't hold up. I did like 250 miles in the first 3 days, and it was a train wreck trying to watch me. It was, my crew was like, you got to pull the pin, man. This is looking gnarly. I was just out there limping my way through, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to do this for another 3 days and just be wrecked for another month.
No, which I was. Smart choice too. I don't know. Yeah, you knew you went in knowing it was aggressively ballsy goal. Like, I don't even know what the adjective to describe that would be. Like, let's break a pelvis and try to set a record in 2 months. Like, that's not a thing that most people would even think of doing. So yeah, man, I think it was still a valiantly fought effort, and I appreciated the sense to pull it, considering.
Yeah. I mean, I still ended up taking another 5 weeks off after that. Yeah. Because there was still just so much pain. Which was a good call, because by the end of March, I ran a 50 miler, and you remember that, I imagine.
Absolutely.
We did
the nice,
easy, just like recovery, just, easy run in preparation for the BC backyard. And man, that went so smooth, like really, really clean. Good run. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, you crushed that one. That was great.
Yeah, I beat my goal time by an hour and change.
Yes, you did. It was fire.
That was super. That's one of those races where everything just kind of clicks, and you're like, oh man, what a perfect day for it.
Sure, man. No, that was great. It was fun, seeing that result and where you're going. So I know recently something that a good chunk of people might know about and know you for, because you're with him for so long, was Dave Proctor's recent, I need you to correct me on this, trans-Canadian effort. So let's elaborate on what that was, how you got involved, everything about that, because I followed that pretty closely from Dave's Facebook, and it was savage. And then I didn't know you were doing it, because you and I had we're both too busy, and then suddenly I was like, Matt Shep's gonna be supporting me for the next 2 weeks. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, tell me all about that.
Yeah. Oh man, I met Dave a few years back, and I've just really admired. Like, I knew when I met Dave, I was like, this is the guy I want to like model my running career after, because like he really just is so dialed, and being able to run with him on that on his Trans-Canadian speed record was like phenomenal. Like, what a dream come true. When he asked me, I was like 100%, I don't care what I'm doing, I will be there.
Awesome.
Like,
Oh yeah.
yes, I like, what an opportunity for a lifetime. And I learned like so much. Like, it really has had a huge impact on how I'm approaching my next training block. And just kind of like how I'm going to take on my next challenge and work my way through it, because like the guy has such an incredible mastery and communication with his body. Like, he really knows what he's feeling and how to work his way through it. And I think that's so tremendous, and what a great space to be in. So yeah, I crewed him for 9 days, beginning in Thunder Bay, or just east of Thunder Bay, Ontario,
Awesome.
and finishing just west of Brandon, Manitoba, which is, if you don't know Canada, quite a long ways. But I was crew pacing him, so I was the only guy with him. I was driving the vehicle, so I would drop him off at wherever he finished the day prior, drive about 20 kilometers ahead, get all his stuff ready, so that when he arrives at the vehicle, he can just grab and go. And then I would turn and run backwards. Well, not literally backwards. I would run east while he's running west. I would run towards him and meet him, almost halfway, because I had the fresher legs. He had run nearly 4,000 kilometers by the time I met up with him. So I would run towards him, and then we'd meet up. We'd run together back to the vehicle, and then I would give him his supplies, get him whatever he needs, and drive to the next point. In addition to like getting groceries and like organizing supper and hotels and getting all the things together so that he could be successful on his route. But it was so easy. We had his girlfriend Lana was on top of everything. She did most of like the evening food orders and organizing the hotel. So it was like, mostly I just had to make sure he got up, got started, and if anything was wrong, I was there to kind of be the fixer of things. But yeah,
I've ever heard in my life. Like, it's just insane to me, dude. His right, what is it, 68 days and change that he made it across
67 days, 10 hours and some change. Yeah,
Sandy,
and so
dude.
he was averaging over 105 kilometers a day, up to 108 near the end. So he started a little lower, and like about 105, and then worked his way up to about 108, which it seems small, 3 kilometers, only 2 miles difference, but that is a big, when you're running that many and you're riding that razor's edge, every 10 minutes that you take away from your recovery routine and then of your sleep is hugely impactful. So that was really neat. Like, just watching his strategy of like, the dude is a machine, like in the literal sense that like everything is exactly the same every day. He'll have exactly the same breakfast. He'll take exactly the same thing on his first loop. It's, in the evening, it's almost exactly the same thing. His routine: shower, like body care, sleep at 8 o'clock every night. It was just really impressive to watch how robotic it really was.
That's nuts, man. So I read the breakdown of the Coros data, and it was so consistent. It was like, for Americans, they had it in miles. So it was like 63 to 68 miles every day for the span of like over 2 months, almost completely. Like, they said his cadence was basically exactly perfect until the end, when it looked like he got a broken foot. Like, it was perfect every day for 2.5 months, or over just 2 months and change. Like, I've never been that consistent with anything in my life. It's so cool.
I think he actually broke his foot in Ontario, or maybe even Quebec, it was a while, because when I picked him up, he was
Really?
saying that his foot had been bothering him.
Oh shit. Yeah.
And I was, he showed me some really neat, like manipulation techniques for the foot and ankle. And so I would do those in the evening or in the morning to try to help him out. And, yeah, he was definitely saying that it had been bothering him then. And so I imagine either if it wasn't already broken, it probably broke shortly after that. That's just,
Yeah.
I mean, incredible how someone could just push through that.
It's insane. Like not just to push through. I mean, granted, you have a goal. Like I would never recommend that to anybody until that's like a goal of your current section of your life, right? Then I mean, sure, whatever. You do you. I get that. What does that routine look like? If you're saying that was so robotic and so structured and all that recovery, like how does someone do that for 2 months and change? What does that look like?
I think so. We talked a lot about, because he reads a lot of books about, from ultra runner perspective, or also just about, some of those different like advice books. And it was funny because he had actually recently read one that I was currently reading at the time, called Full Catastrophe Living. And it talks about non-striving and not looking towards the end of the day and not looking towards the end of the run, or what's going to happen tomorrow. It's all about just try to be right here, right now. So every day, if you're not comparing today to yesterday or tomorrow, then it doesn't matter if you're having oatmeal for breakfast for the 60th time in a row. Today is a new day, and just like be right here. Like it's still good. Oatmeal, if it was good yesterday, it's good today. And like it's only by the comparison that you start to go like, oh, I'm so sick of this. So he really lived in the moment, and took every single day, every single step, right there as it was. And that, I think, was what allowed him to just be okay with doing the same thing every day, because if you're not comparing it to the day prior, it's all new.
Yeah. Is there, like, I assume there's a piece you find to the rhythm too. Like, what did you find in the 9 days out there that you were with Dave?
Yeah, and I really, so my goal was to just try to like mimic everything that he was doing. Like I wanted to see like, okay, this guy has done something that I dream of doing one day myself. Maybe not running across Canada, but like to be able to go consistently like that for such a large volume for such a long time. Like that is a skill that I've been trying to perfect for some time. So I wanted to, okay, let me do exactly what he's doing as much as I can, and see, like what is it, how does it affect me, and what does it take for me to get to that level. And so, yeah, like just being able to do those things in the same order, like get up, I had the same exact breakfast that he's having, and then he liked to break it up 20 kilometers, 10 10 10 10 all the way to the end. And then in the last leg, I would hustle a protein shake out to him. So he'd drink this protein shake and do some walking breaks to kind of cool himself down before he gets in the car and shuts it down for the day.
Smart. Really smart.
So, yeah. So like following those, and then just the things that he ate. He said something that really, that I really kind of took to heart. And it was because like I've been trying to work on my nutrition and figure out like what can I put in my body that works well for me. And you and I have had, many conversations at length about that. And one thing he said that really kind of like I wanted to bite down on was, once the furnace is burning hot enough, it doesn't matter what you put in there. And I thought like that must be true, because I know when I'm running multiple days on end, and even, while I was running with him, I was putting in an average of, I think, like 75 kilometers a day. And I was just eating whatever I could get my hands on.
Sure.
He loves bakery items and all these different things. So I was like, just trying to get as many calories in, and I felt terrific, honestly. And I don't know how much of that, comes, psychosomatic. You say this is good for me, and then you consume it, it will be good for you. Sure. Or if maybe I just was tolerating it. I don't know. It went really smooth for me. I couldn't believe, how generally, if I'm doing an effort of that length and that volume, 9 days at 75 kilometers a day average is quite a ways to go. And generally I would have a crew for myself. And at this point I was, taking care of somebody else. So, well, I mean, it really wasn't that difficult because he was so robotic that it was easy to plan ahead. I know he's going to want for an afternoon snack. I know what he's going to need, a bathroom break. I know what to make him for. In fact, I made his breakfast the night prior just because it was that easy. So yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. I mean, both of you are so fit that honestly, it's absolutely, I mean, it's not like you're crushing zone 5 work out there, right? So it really is like once you have that level of fitness, you really can fuel it with most anything, right? Like it's not like, once you're there and you're like going kind of that pace and just at that cruise speed, like at that point, it really does just become calories. And like if we look at, I can never remember his name. His name's James, the guy, the Iron Cowboy. Like he crushed 10,000 calories, 8 to 10,000 calories a day, and it was nothing but it was like I think 8 egg McMuffins for a large chunk of that. And
wow,
when you're that fit and you're like going at a pace that below your like red line, it's like for him, he can do an Ironman like sub 10, I think, but he was pushing him like 14 to 16 hours. So by no means his fastest pace. You just need food, just fuel it. So yeah, man, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it was definitely enjoyable to not have to be like, calorie restricted or trying to find the right foods. Just whatever goes in, and it went really smooth. I never had any sort of stomach upsets or any trouble getting calories down. It is such an easy pace. I mean, I think we were averaging like a 6:15 kilometer.
Cool. Yeah, cruisy for you. It's awesome.
Yeah, super cruisy.
Oh yeah, man, it's legit. So I feel like on an effort like that, and I know because I saw some of his posts, but I'd kind of be curious what if you two talked about it. The mental game has to be big, and you also seem to enjoy these like backyard loops, right? That have to get a little monotonous. Like, what have you found and what have you learned that helps you play into that like mental aspect of your game, whether it be Dave choosing to go out on the next day when he's already done so many, or like deciding to go out on that next 4-mile loop that you've done 100 times already? Like, what helps play into that?
Man, it's so much. And that's like the biggest trick of the whole thing is, and really what I find is like, you have to be able to find joy in it. Like you have to be into it.
Love that.
Because once you're just out there grinding, it like each loop gets progressively longer. If you're not in it anymore, mentally, when you're just like, I don't want to do this. When you get to that point, every loop is so much harder. I mean, and you could do it, you can grind through it because eventually you might start enjoying it again. But like, if you need to find that joy and like search for why is it that you're out there today, and what is it that you love about this? So when you get fatigued, like pain isn't real, right? We know that pain, it's, I mean, everything that you experience in the world comes to you through sensory input. Either you smell it, you taste it, you see it, you hear it, you feel it. And if you remove one of those, particularly your vision, like all of your other senses are going to be heightened, right? Because that's how you're receiving your information. We get a lot of it through our eyes. So that takes up a lot of our attention, but you can shift that focus anywhere. And so we know that pain is just, I mean, in the literal sense, it's just like an electrical impulse that goes from your knee to your brain, and your knee is saying, this isn't normal, this isn't right, or this is uncomfortable.
Right.
But honestly, like all that is just a little electrical impulse that says this is bad. But as far as that goes, it's nothing that should stop you, right? It's not physical. It's not like a physical barrier, like this brick wall right here. Like I can't pass through this brick wall, right? But I can continue to run alongside of it. So when you're dealing with pain, number one, like having a good relationship with your body, like understanding when pain is something bad, like, okay, this is like, I'm missing half my leg. That's the pain that you should be listening to.
Sure.
But when you're running and you just get that little pain in your knee and you're like, this is sending me a signal. Well, number one, becoming more accustomed with that pain, you will be able to tolerate a lot more. When it's brand new, or if you don't run ever, and then you go out and run 1 mile as hard as you can, you're going to be in pain. It's not,
yeah,
it's not like you're going to be in pain like somebody cut your leg off. That's a whole different level of pain. You just aren't accustomed to that level of pain. Yeah, you may be in more pain than somebody who doesn't do that, but like it's nothing different than what everybody else is going to experience. You're just less accustomed to it. So your body's like, warning, warning. It's sending out all these warnings and saying like, this is not what we do. So if you do it more often and you practice, you become accustomed with those pains. So like not using ibuprofen or any sort of like pain dulling devices, just being with it and understanding that like, this is okay. Like I can tolerate this, and also making the adjustments so that hopefully it doesn't happen. If your muscles are tight and they're causing you to kind of like maybe pull your knee out of alignment, then like make those adjustments so that you don't have to do that anymore. Or adjusting your gait if you need to. If you're like a really open stride heel striker, and you start to feel like a lot of pain in your heel, well, maybe adjust your stride a little shorter, get more up on your toes, and see how that, how that affects you. And if you just spend more time practicing and being in all those spaces and understanding that you can tolerate a little bit of pain, it's not going to kill you. You'll get better at it, and you'll be able to tolerate more. And you'll be just, as you get better, more training, more tolerance, and then it won't be such a big effect on you when you're fatigued and you're feeling that pain. You can go like, okay, I'm familiar with this. I know I can handle this level of pain. I've done it before, and we're gonna just adapt and overcome.
Yeah, man. I mean, that makes a ton of sense, right? Like it's all just data. Like pain is data. And sometimes it's data that your pelvis is broken, right? And then sometimes it's data that like maybe you need to shorten your stride. And
I fell maybe a mile into the 4 mile course, and I still finished the loop with time to turn around and continue. But there's no way that was a smart call to quit. Probably not the smartest call to continue, but like just to say, like you can tolerate a level of pain that you're not really prepared to.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I feel like that's kind of, again, you're just kind of collecting that and figuring out where it goes. They've shown that it's not like professional athletes have a higher pain threshold. They have a higher pain tolerance. And I think the only way we get there is actually figuring out where, just having that experience and knowing what's bad data or not. I've hurt myself so many times. Like right now I know like what I can push through and what I can't. Like my left ankle's a little tweaky right now. I destroyed it in college. It doesn't feel like that. Right. So like we have that spectrum based on past experience as to what you can actually go through and what's smart and what will take you some like not the right amount of recovery time and all that. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. David Goggins, if you've heard of him, he has what they call the cookie jar. And I just love that. Like you can reference all of the hard stuff that you've done in the past and say like, okay, I made it through this and I remember how difficult that was. And this is not that difficult. So as long as I don't get to that point, then I'm doing okay. And even if I do get to that point, I came out the other side and I'm just fine. And it was a great lesson. So even if you do get to there, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's all just building experiences, right? And we can also use that data from others to figure out what's appropriate and what's not. Like Goggins' first 100 is dumb. Don't run yourself to rhabdo and break your feet and then duct tape them. right? Like probably not great, but also like we can know that experience to like learn that from others. Like it's all just collecting and figuring that out so we can figure it out in the moment.
But that, I mean, there's a perfect example of how like your relationship with pain, like he has definitely spent a great deal of his life putting himself into these big pain caves, if you will. And, and as a result, he can tolerate breaking his feet and taping them together and continuing. Like that is just his ability to tolerate a significant amount of pain and understand that, like, okay, I'm receiving these signals and I'm acknowledging them, but I don't have to let them consume me.
He's also willing to take the like destructive time off afterwards that does to you, right? So like, yeah, it's just like having the trade off and figuring out what you're willing to deal with. But yeah, it all comes from experience, right? Like kind of figuring that out. It makes sense. If we're looking at your training, like you and I have spent so many hours talking about training for this. Like what does your training tend to look like for whatever you might be doing? How has that adapted over the years? Like what does all that look like for you?
So, I mean, I used to train just by volume, like, okay, get the runs in, make them long, make them work for me. And then I teamed up with Personal Peak a few years back, and I started training by heart rate and time, which was like really incredible. I really took it seriously, and I was making sure that I was always being consistent and training everything right to a T, following the programs, and I performed really well. It really made a big difference making that change over to heart rate based and time based training. I enjoy it because it doesn't matter how fast I run, or if I run as fast today as I did yesterday, or if I run as far. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent the amount of time in a certain effort level, and that's all that my heart really cares about.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't care how far I go, how many steps I take.
Absolutely.
So like that shift was huge in my progression, and definitely I utilize that still in my training, but my training has adapted quite a bit. And perhaps it's that I've shifted away from like a winning focus. I always wanted to I want to go into this race and I want to win. And so I had these, big audacious goals, and, I had fun. I like competition. I like going in and trying to see how well I can do, but it really was always followed, if I wasn't successful, by this kind of like feeling of defeat, like, oh darn, where did I make the mistake and how am I going to do this better? Like, so I would always question myself in training. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? I don't want to say it was toxic, but it definitely didn't give me as much pleasure from all of my running, because my running was focused. And I remember specific days going like, oh my gosh, I have this huge training run on the docket. Usually the long runs I don't mind. It's the hard runs that I would be like, I'd look at and go like, oh, I don't even want to do this. It's so hard.
Yeah, I know.
It'd be, I would dread them and they would give me anxiety. So I kind of like shifted my focus more to like just finding the joy in the run. And, because of the things that I do, like if I was marathon training, I think performance at that point, like you need to be so spot on because there's so little room for error.
It's fucking nuts. Like I train a couple marathoners and it's just like the precision is nuts.
Yeah, you're pushing that razor's edge the whole time.
Especially when you're like right on that cusp of like the next thing you're trying to hit. Like one of the guys I'm trying to train right now is like trying to drop 5 minutes off so he can get his BQ. And it's like when you're trying to trim that, it's like it's so tight.
Every second at that point is valuable.
We're trying to get hydration so perfect that he like just stays hydrated enough, but not pee. Like that. Jesus, dude. Yeah, it's so anal. And I mean, I love it. Because like that's me, but still, like it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But the things that I enjoy are not. They're not quite as precise. Like 6 days, you've got time to walk.
Oh, for
you've
sure.
got time to chat and have a snack and So there's so much more time in the day available when you're running,
Agreed.
when you're taking up the whole 24 hours.
Yeah.
So
And like for
I
the stuff I do myself, I could not agree more with you. Absolutely. What I enjoy it so much more.
right. So yeah, so I've tried to like my main focus is just making sure that I am giving myself enough stimulus every day. And so
Awesome.
actually lately, because of the volume of work I've been doing with Sinister Sports this summer,
Yeah.
I've hardly done any running. I mean, I do go out. I usually, when I'm running, I'm going to be doing some road running or
Sure.
some like, I'll find, lately I've been doing a lot of like speed mountain climbing, like just
Yep.
finding a hill and just like powering up it as quick as I can and then jogging down. And that was I was meant to go out to Barkley Fall Classic in September, but just really feel like I'm swimming upstream lately. So I'm probably gonna bail on that one and just kind of put all my eggs in the I've got Big Dog's Backyard National coming up. So I made Team Canada this year, so I'll run with them in Kelowna, nearby Kelowna in Summerland.
Sure.
In October. So I'm just going to put all my focus there. But yeah, as far as training goes, I'm just trying to, get as much volume as I feel, like I said, that mind body connection, that, how you communicate with yourself is huge. And as long as I'm getting out there and I'm getting in that good volume and, making sure that I'm enjoying it, I never have that moment of where I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm just kind of trying to stay in that, like, this is hard, but I love it. And
good, man.
I can get a lot more done.
It's really good. If you're looking at like bigs, like what does anything change between now and then for you as far as training? Like, you clearly have the base of fitness to do it, right? But like, what does that look like between now and what is that, 2 months that happens between now and bigs for you?
Oh man, I've got so much on the docket. Once I'm done with this race, I'm going to take 2 weeks and travel up north to Valley View. I have some properties up there. I'm going to go do some maintenance on. So I'll use that time. I really like Valley View as a training ground because it's so flat and I've got some really nice rural roads to run on. Awesome. And also a really fantastic fitness facility there. So the first 2 weeks of September, I'm going to be in Valley View, really probably just laying down a huge base of volume because it'll be mid-October. So I'll do that, and then I'll return here and return to kind of some easier stuff, like as far as like speed goes. I'll be doing a lot more hiking as we get ready for our final race of the season, Castle Mountain. And that's again, it's on a ski hill here in southern Alberta. Well, I'm in BC now, but over in southern Alberta. So I'll go down and I'll do that, and I'll probably spend some time doing a lot of hiking and then a lot of road running in advance of that, which will bring us to basically the end of September, and I'll have the first 2 weeks of October to just kind of like dial it down. And I'm gonna really try to taper a lot more for this one than I have. Generally, I tend to push it out to like 10 days out before a race. I'll start my taper just because I don't know why. I feel like I don't need that much of a taper, but I'm really going to try a bigger taper for this one so that I can be like as fresh as possible. Just kind of knowing what I found out when I ran with Dave, like I was not doing anything. I was purely doing hiking and work. I was building things constantly. I was just so flooded with work tasks that I wasn't doing much in the way of like running. I mean, maybe my average was like 50 or 60 kilometers a week. And then I immediately went to like 75 kilometers a day. And then immediately after, I took 1 day off to travel home. And then I was hiking. I would put in like a 90 kilometer week hiking while carrying a chainsaw while I was clearing trails for Sinister 7. So it really, I went into it feeling really fresh. Yeah. And I came out feeling okay, well enough that I can continue to go. And so I think I'm going to just try to like, you know, reapply that, go into it feeling as fresh as possible, and then just because I want to perform really well. My score that earned me a spot on the team will be removed at the end of this year, and it'll start the next cycle for the Worlds, which will take place next year. So I'll have to earn myself that this won't be a qualifier for the World Championships. And even if it was, I don't know if it'll be good enough. There are so many phenomenal athletes coming out. So I need to put up a pretty good score to get to Big's World Championships next year, which is, it's kind of like my annual goal is to make it onto the Big's team, whether it's going to be the national team or the world team. That's kind of like my annual goal is make it there, because I just really enjoy the backyard format.
That's awesome, dude. So if you're looking at a taper and going bigger than 10, are you going for like the standard 2-week, or are you thinking even longer?
Probably 2-week. I don't know if I can go long. Jesus, the wind keeps kicking this dust up in my eyes. Yeah, I don't know if I could tolerate longer than 2 weeks in a taper. And I mean, if I did, it would probably not look like a taper to most people.
Yeah, I mean,
still putting up like 80 or 90K.
I mean, haven't seen your training, right? Like, I think 2 makes sense. Like, very clearly, like 2 makes sense.
Yeah. 2 weeks, and it'll be a good test. You know, like I like to keep some notes on, you know, when I'm into training. I'll keep notes on, you know, what I'm doing and what feels good, and, you know, what's going wrong, and, you know, where I think I can improve. And then we'll see when it comes to race day how I perform and what'll, you know, come of it. So I'm excited to see, because definitely in the run up to BC Backyard, I was doing a significant amount of volume. I was feeling pretty good. I took a short taper, and I performed well. It was a very tough course. It had this brutal concrete downhill for a couple hundred meters. And it was just like, man, going down that after like 30 some hours of running, you just hit every step was agonizing. And
oh, it sounds awful, man. Like, I told you when you
mentally,
did it. It's like, that sounds like the worst shit for my knees. I don't want that at all.
Yeah, you know, I often, because we had to go down it, and then at the end of the loop we had to run up it, so I'd go backwards because it actually felt really nice on my knees.
That makes sense.
To run backwards up it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that one definitely was a mental challenge for me, and that's something I've been, you know, like as we discussed earlier, like, is trying to grow that mental stamina, just to be able to kind of like to tolerate the monotony. And I kind of broke with that one, knowing I have a really great score already that's very likely going to get me on the Canadian team. So I just didn't have the oomph to continue to push myself when I was feeling that, you know, brutal downhill. And I got to the bottom of it, and I just went, you know, I could probably just be okay with stopping right now. And having just come from that injury only like 6 months prior, I was okay with pulling the pin with a pretty decent run. I think I did like 33 hours, maybe 34 hours, somewhere in there.
Sounds right. There's a lot. It sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot. It's like almost 200. Maybe it's 200. Yeah, it's got to be over 200 kilometers, because saying 32 is 214. So it'd be like 230K or so. I figure that's
like that.
a pretty decent little jog. And yeah, but I really need to kind of like just put my focus in, you know, where I'm going to find the most amount of joy, and how I'm going to like push through those moments when it does get difficult and I don't see the value in continuing. But with it being nationals, there's always value in continuing, because you've got, you know, you score not only just your individual score, but you're scoring points as a team. So you have those people, and I've got a really great group running this year that I'll be able to, you know, draw some energy from, and really just I'm just looking forward to it. Dave Proctor is going to be there. Kevin Barada, who I just paced at Fat Dog. Ihor who's been just, oh my gosh, he's come out on the running scene lately. And I think he started running during COVID. The kid's like 27 years old, and he's just a crusher. Everything he touches, he's just taking home the gold.
That's
I'm
awesome.
really looking forward to spending some time running with him. If I can hold on, that kid is so fast. But it'll just be great. Stephanie Simpson's going to be out this year. She won in 2020. So it's just really great to run with these folks again. I really enjoy their company, and they're all really tremendous athletes. So just as I, tried to glean as much information from Dave when I was running with him, I like to do the same. And backyard's so easy and so well prepared for that kind of thing. You get a start at the beginning with everybody. So you want to run with somebody, very likely you're going to have that opportunity, even if they're a fastie.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it sounds like you're doing really well. One thing I did want to ask you about, because I know that you do a bunch of it, and you're looking strong right now. Like, what does your strength training look like? I know right now it's carrying chainsaws up a mountain, but generally, what is your strength training look like?
I'd say lately, all I've been doing is lugging trees and chainsaws around. But yeah, as far as strength training goes, I am huge. I have a background, but prior to getting hardcore into ultra running, I was, a strength coach. And so I've always had a lot of strength training in my daily routine. And, so typically it's going to be number one, yoga. I love doing that stretching. And I think it's huge for, like I said earlier, maintaining that mind-body connection, when you're stretching and when you're not just trying to ooh, how far can I reach? But what does it feel like when I reach? Is it tighter on one side than the other? Why is that? What if I turn my palms over? Okay, when I stretch my legs out and I pedal my feet, where's the tightness? And what's causing that? And, if you spend that time to understand what your body feels like in each position, then when you start to feel a pain coming on, you'll be better equipped to understand, how can I work around this? A pain in your knee it's likely being caused by an imbalance in your hip or your ankles. What is causing this to feel like that, and how can I adjust it? And if you have good proprioception, you can move your body around and work around these different little kind of, we call them niggles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pain that's not really nothing.
Yeah. Nice, man. I get that. Well, I appreciate you coming on, dude. And it's a good chat as always with you. What else do you want to make sure you get out there before we call this a day?
Yeah. I guess just no matter where you are in your training plan, for those of you that are listening, just remember why you're there and what you're doing it for, and try not to just chase the numbers, because I know ultra runners, they typically are that real type A personality. I got to have the numbers all right. Man, for me, it really just took a lot away from it. And I'm finding so much more in just in the enjoyment in the run, and my performance is following, just because if you follow Andrew Huberman, he's the Huberman Lab podcast. He talks a lot about dopamine and kind of those different pathways. And if you are looking at the end of the run for your reward, then you're going to cause yourself to imbalance your dopamine, and all of those hormones and chemicals that you receive. You are looking, and you, even if you're imagining it, a lot of people say, imagine yourself winning the race, where you're giving yourself, if you're imagining and you're really buying into this, okay, here's me running across the finish line, you're giving yourself a little hit of dopamine, and that's going to change your baseline. And so what I try to do is just be I'm going to be right here right now, and I'm going to love the process. And that right there is has just been tremendous for helping me to kind of regulate those feelings, those up and downs, and not be hit that high and then hit that super low. I just try, like by being right here all the time, I get us to stay in that neutral zone, but my baseline gets to be maybe a little bit higher.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that makes a bunch of sense. I've linked a couple of Huberman's dopamine podcast into the Facebook group, and dopamine is very responsive, right? So the more it goes up, the more it goes down. You always have a very responding crash, and we can recognize this pretty equally, like similar, simply by thinking of like cocaine. So if you do a bunch of it, you have a very big fall. We know, even if you haven't done coke, which I've not, but I know people who have, because when you work night shift and you know people who have, we've seen you've seen a corresponding fall. So when we end up, like, if we don't have as much of a rise, you don't have as much of a crash. So if we can, you're going to have some dopamine push as a result of the end of your race. But if it's not like climbing Everest, it's also not going to be like plummeting to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. So if we can like stabilize that a little bit, your motivation tends to be a little better across the day. So that makes a ton of sense. Like focusing on the process.
Yeah. Just like really find that joy in the process. And then the longer you spend doing that, that baseline level of dopamine is going to actually go up because you're spending more time in that positive position. And that's just like, it's super great. So yeah, no matter where you're at in your training plan, like just take a moment to step back, especially like if you're heart rate based, like you don't have to go at full tilt every run. Just go out there and practice the motion because that is like, just practice the motion. And because the more you do that, the easier it becomes. And then the easier it is to enjoy it.
Absolutely true. Good. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. And
right on.
Thanks to everybody who's listening. It's always fun talking with Matt. I'm glad we finally like made this happen. He and I have been like fighting back and around through like varying schedules for a couple months now. So thanks again, Matt. And we'll probably have you back on at some point. So I'll chat with you soon. Thanks.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. To be clear, I'm not a doctor nor a registered dietitian, and nothing you heard was medical advice. You should always speak with a qualified medical professional before making any changes to your training regimen. If you enjoy the podcast or found it useful, please take a couple seconds to give it a rating or share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. And if you want more of this information, please head to the Trail and Ultra Running Nutrition group on Facebook. You'll be in good company with other like-minded people who like to do hard stuff outside.